have on my Mr. Miyagi shirt because I got up this morning looking to do some karate moves. I've been looking to get my Bruce Leroy on, my Jim Kelly into the Dragon, because today, Friday, has been full of stuff that is quite fun to talk about. And one of those is actually the idea of OU Texas, for which Joe Constiglione has said, hey, we've never had an opportunity to play that game under the lights. We might actually think about it, which I think is fascinating and could be something like a very, very bright spot in a very, very dark wilderness that is the college football season to come, we think, right? But it also got me thinking about playing this game without fans in the stands, like none, which I don't see as the unrealistic possibility that many saw it as in May, especially right now under, the awe of this news that we have consumed over the last 48 hours. But it also gets to the reason as to why I don't think OU Texas home and home is a good idea this year, as much as I would love to see the Steers come to the OU slaughterhouse at some point, because next year you'd have to go to Austin where they might get to play the game in front of fans, and then that would feel unfair. And it turns out there's data to support that, because the fan experience is one that we get to actually study, right? There's going to be so much news that comes out of this as we get through it. And one of the things that I was interested to know about was how this might look for the competitive play on the field if there are no fans in the stands. And the Bundesliga in Germany gave us insight into that, because it's an unwelcome experiment, but it's an experiment all the same, in which Germany started up its league in May and demonstrated that what constitutes an advantage is not merely the familiarity of the pitch, but largely the fans. The performances of home games in the Bundesliga, for all intents and purposes, collapsed in front of empty stands, right? New York Times has this data. The number of home victories slipped by 10 percentage points to 33% of matches in empty stadiums from 43% in full ones. That's huge. That's a massive shift. The change was so extreme that Lucas Kepler, who's the managing director of a data and analytics firm called Impact, noted that it's almost a negative home advantage for most of the teams in that league. And according to other analysis performed by a firm called Gracenote, home teams scored fewer goals than they had in full stadiums, 1.74 to 1.43, leading to a decline in goal scoring all over, right? Add to that, they also took fewer shots, a decrease by about 10%. The probability of a given shot ending up in a goal dropped by more than a point as well to 11.11%. Home teams, the research found, also attempted fewer crosses, won fewer corners, and tried fewer dribbles. Also add to this, by almost every attacking metric, Bundesliga teams were worse while playing in an empty home stadium. Most curiously though, goalkeepers actually played better away from home than they did at home. And that's really interesting from a data standpoint, because the goalkeepers are the same people, right? In 83 matches, Gracenote took a look at, home teams were penalized more for fouls in empty stadiums than they generally were when the stands were full. Now, it's been colloquially said, anecdotally said, that there's a home field advantage when it comes to officiating across every sport, that the home team gets the benefit of the doubt. We also now have some data to kind of show that. According to the Bundesliga, which keeps its own stats and records and then gives those analytics out to the clubs, we saw more fouls handed out to home teams than we would normally see in a given year. Then add to this that the intensity of the game didn't really suffer. According to the league, players sprinted a little more and teams made marginally more high-intensity runs in games held in empty stadiums. Matter of fact, Hertha Berlin had 100 more high-intensity runs per game than they had before the COVID. And they also had more overall sprints during the game than they had before the COVID. But Borussia Dortmund did not. And what we saw was Hertha Berlin was playing to try to stay in the top flight. And Dortmund didn't really have anything to play for because Bayern Munich had pretty well had this thing in hand and sewn it up. And after that, what it basically showed was that the lesson is not that the fans' presence is significant to a team's intensity as having something to play for. Okay? The empty stands took a sting, not, because we weren't there, but because Dortmund didn't have anything that they were trying to play for. So they didn't go after it as hard, which speaks to the human idea of incentive. We all perform better when the incentive is greater. When there is no incentive to perform well, performance lags. When there is no great environment around or positive reinforcement around, performance lags as well, right? But the kicker here is the absence of fans, these huge cadaverous stadiums with an oppressive silence and real, surreal setting, changed the way that the players expressed their talent. Not really, but how they approach the game. It created a more cautious, more mechanical approach, right? A business-oriented approach. And that has been a conceit among all major sports, is that they are becoming so much more of a business and less about the creation and creativity of a beautiful experience. We see this in the NBA with data analytics becoming a huge part of how we keep track and talk about players and player development. Major League Baseball took it from Moneyball all the way up, so much so that we don't even see baseball men running front offices anymore. We see hedge fund managers and dudes that went to Yale and Harvard and Cornell and Princeton running baseball operations. The data in the NFL has changed to such a degree that we all don't value running backs anymore. And we all say, why aren't you passing on first down? And we have data to show that if you can run the ball well, cool, run the ball. But as soon as you're not able to run the ball well, your productivity falls off a cliff. Meanwhile, if you keep throwing, you're going to have better opportunities to score. So what we saw from the Bundesliga's return was the confirmation that soccer, at least, and I think all major sports with big money behind them, are a business more than ever in this very sterile environment. So looking at OU Texas, which is a tremendous rivalry game and one we all look forward to, the idea of playing that game in an empty stadium where the home team might be Oklahoma only gives Oklahoma kind of sort of an advantage, but not really, right? We got lots of data to say that it's going to equal out and it's going to give the away team a little bit more to go after. That said, probably going to play the game in the Cotton Bowl anyway. And if they play the game in the Cotton Bowl anyway, and it's mostly empty, how is that going to be a whole lot different than what it normally is? Well, we got to get different data for that, right? But I was taking a look at this from a home and away standpoint because I sincerely want to see Oklahoma and Texas play at DKR and at Gaylord Family Memorial. But I'm also, I'm of the new age. I'm not really a traditionalist like that. I don't believe in tradition for tradition's sake. I also, don't necessarily think that OU and Texas should be played in October, but that's getting into something else entirely, right? That's getting into the Texas State Fair, for which we're not going to have. So maybe this is a good year to move OU Texas to September so that you can get that game in, as opposed to playing that game in October when it's about to get cold and the COVID is still going to be around, but so is the flu itself. And we all going to be in a world of hurt. So just think about it. That's all I'm saying. Just think about it.